And I'm back, the John Alite Show. Subscribe, hit the buttons, follow me, comment, and I'm going to get right into a story that happened years ago in the 80s, and it's very relatable to the Albert Anastasia hit. I don't, people ask me all the time why I don't do as many mob stories as I used to and different things. I don't want to glorify a life that I'm against. I mean, it's part of history, so talking about it is just part of history. So I'm going to go ahead and start this one. So this happened in Ozone Park, Queens. It was a guy, Vito Scaglione, where we used to call him Tito. He owned a place called Father and Sons. It was on 84th Street and 83rd Street, in between the middle of the block, 101st Avenue. If you go down about 10 blocks, you had Jojo Carrazzo's club down there, who later on becomes a concierge of the Gambino family. If you go the other way, about 12 to 14 blocks, you had the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, and that was John Gotti Sr.'s uh, club. If you go a couple blocks past that to 100, and I believe it was 3rd or 4th Street, was Joey Scopo, his club. So back in the day, and the difference between this era and the era back in the 80s, when we were very involved and active, there was killings left and right. And I've spoken about so many killings over the years of me talking about the mob in that generation compared to the mafia this generation. Um, Back in Jamaica Avenue, I spoke about several murders of a friend of mine, Angelo Costelli, got killed in front of the White Horse Tavern on 87th Street, Jamaica Avenue. Next door was the Shamrock. Two guys got killed in a mob hit there with Bobby Glasses. You go to the corner is where Mikey, my good friend Merlo, was shot in the head with a shotgun, and basically in front of the White Horse also. My friend Frankie Scarpanito, he owned the White Horse, and he was affiliated with the Genovese family. And you had guys like Johnny Santora that was there, my cousin Patsy Adriano, who he got killed and shot in the head a couple blocks down in his apartment on 91st Street and Jamaica Avenue that I spoke about. And when you head down towards 78th Street and Jamaica Avenue, you had the Galati brothers, and one of those brothers got killed by a family member also, and I won't discuss the personal stuff about that family, but he got hit and blasted with a shotgun in the head. So this was typical in our neighborhood on 79th Street and Jamaica Avenue. I had a friend of mine back then, Michael, who stabbed and killed a Spanish guy that they had a confrontation with on 79th Street and Jamaica Avenue. We can go, and I can go from block to block like this, is my point, of the way there was consequences for everybody's action, and it was an open field of murder. And you had the hit in Brooklyn that I've talked about, where Frankie Burke, Jimmy DeGent Burke's son, Frankie, who was a good friend of mine, was at an after hours called the Black Gate, where Tito, a Spanish gangster, would own that place and ran the place. And it was more of an after hours, but it was a club also. And we had a lot of our friends that would go to that place, especially late at night after you finished going out with dinner and clubbing and whatever you did, and you'd end up there and these pool tables there. There was a lot of drugs there, obviously. There was prostitution there on the second floor. And it was a seedy place that we would all go. And Frankie Burke got killed outside that door. And I could continue up and down our blocks and talk about guys like Greg Ryder, who lived out Long Island but stayed with us in the area. His father just died in prison of health issues that got a life sentence. Was charged with several murders and involved with guys like Nicky Barnes, who testified, and Bumpy Johnson, that there's a lot of movies out. And Mark was supplying the Harlem area with heroin, and he was convicted of several murders. So that was the generation of the mob where people still believe it has the same violent tendencies it had in the 80s and 90s and prior to that. In 1957, for the people who don't know, at the old Sheridan on, I believe it was 7th Avenue and 55th Street, if I'm correct, Albert Anastasia was sitting in a chair, and two guys come in and shoot him up in the head, and obviously he died. It was one of the biggest hits in the history of the mob, of the way it was done, and he was part of a Murder Incorporated. So it was a splash hit. But something that mirrors that is Father and Son uh, barbershop, and Vito Scaglione was murdered there, shot, I believe, 10 times in the head and face by three masked men. Now, that happened in 1987, I believe, September, around September. Um, and Albert Anastasia was killed in 57 in October. So the hits are very similar in a lot of ways, not just because of the time frame, but because it happened in a barbershop the same way. It was early in the morning. Uh, Scaglione was the killer of Frankie Burke. They had an argument. We all actually hung out together. Next door to Father and Sons was a place called the PM Pub that we all frequent. It was a mob hangout. It was all of us guys would hang out there and do business out of there, whether it was bookmaking, whether it was drugs, whether it was, Kennedy Airport heists. That was our meeting spot. And almost every gangster in our area would stop and hang out and have a couple of drinks with us and, move on to whatever they were doing. We'd sit down, we'd make our deals there. And from there, we would decide on who we were going to do what to that week to earn money. But this particular point is uh, Dominic Cataldo was a powerful guy in the Colombo family, a captain, and his brother-in-law was Vito Scaglione. Vito Scaglione was known by us as Tito. We would call him Tito. He kind of looked just like the guy that ran Tito's, that ran the Black Gate down in Brooklyn on City Line Avenue. They had the same color, salt and pepper kind of hair, same size, height, body weight, everything very similar. So when this murder happened uh, of Frankie Burke, they actually locked up the wrong Tito. Instead of locking up Vito, they originally locked up Tito and believed he was the killer of Frankie Burke. As time went on, obviously the mob knew who really did it. The police force, the local police, the FBI had no idea who did it. At the time of Frankie's murder, about that same time frame, there was four other homicides within the mob that week. So you can understand the gravity of the consequences of people's actions in the 80s and why everybody was so violent or very careful of who you talk to the wrong way, because it's like stepping on eggshells. If you step on that wrong shell, there was no talk. You'd end up dead. And guys like Scott Schumann, that he got killed up on Queens Boulevard, that also stayed with us. And he was hit close to 30 times because of the fear factor. He was a wild guy. They were afraid of him. They asked a lot of guys to hit him. They were afraid to try to hit him. He was a friend of mine. And before I went to prison, I used to tell people, listen, I told him, don't come around. They're going to try to hit you because they keep trying to ask me to do it. So I warned him, I tipped him, obviously, the arrogance of the street and what we all think. We're untouchable, especially him. He thought that at that time, a lot of people feared him for his actions with a gun, his friendships with certain mobsters, and he miscalculated because eventually he gets killed. But we're going to go back to this mob hit because of Gotti Sr. was also the neighbor, obviously, the neighborhood boss, the boss of the Gambino family. And he would go there once in a while for a haircut. So it made it sensational that this is a location a couple blocks, 10 blocks, 12 blocks from his hangout at the Bergen. So eventually, let me take these off. Eventually, uh, it was his number got called, Vito Scaglione. And in the mob world, in my opinion, Dominic Cataldo okayed it. He knew he couldn't do anything about it. They probably told him they were going to hit him. It's your brother-in-law. And Dominic probably said, okay, I understand the life. He killed Frankie Burke. He's got to go. The point I'm going to make is when people talk about nationalities, Jimmy Burke was in prison. He had a life sentence. And the power he wielded from prison, and he's Irish. He's not Italian. So I'm going to make this known that when somebody can pull and have the power he does, it's not because of your nationality. It's because of the money you make, the earning capacity, the men you have working with you, who follows you, who works for you, who respects you, that there was nobody going to stop that hit. And the guys that went in obviously were professional. They were never locked up for the murder. And they woke up, got dressed, put masks on, must have had backup cars besides the one car they drove, walked into Father and Sons at about 10:30, maybe 10:40 in the morning. Uh, Vito, who we called Tito, was just sitting in his barber chair. And the funny thing is, he knew he was going to get killed. For the people that don't know this, he was not going to go on the run. He knew he should have. He didn't hide. He didn't stay there with a shotgun. He didn't stay there with guns. He kept his back to the door, had his head back, just sitting back and relaxing, waiting for his time to come. I don't believe when they walked in, he knew they walked in. He didn't get up, panic. He just laid there and let them shoot him 10 times in the head and face. So the belief, and he had other family members. He had a brother, Nino, and he had another brother that earlier in life, a decade or 2 decades probably before that, was wanted for murder, and he moved out of the country before this happened. So he took off. So this was such a life that everybody was accustomed to or believed blindly in, that he didn't go on a run. He didn't care. He understood that his brother-in-law was probably going to give the okay for him to get killed because there's nothing he could do about it. And if his brother-in-law didn't okay it, I believe he was in prison at the time. I think he was in prison. He got charged with semi-automatic 9mm with a silencer, and I don't know what other charges. So his brother-in-law understood the life, and he stamped the okay, in my opinion, for Vito to get killed. And the sensational part about it was because they related it to the hit of Albert Anastasia. I mean, it mimicked exactly that, laying in a barber's chair. The only difference, he was the barber and he was the victim. The difference in the Albert Anastasia homicide was Albert Anastasia was there to get a shave. Instead, he got his head blown off. Um, and that was the mafia then. That was why the fear factor of the mafia was there was such violence, uh, and unlike what people think, all 5 families work together and accept certain terms of somebody getting killed within their family if it's justified. It's the the murders that aren't okayed, that somebody kills somebody without permission, uh, which causes family feud back and forth. And maybe after you kill somebody without permission, you're going to get killed. Whoever went with you is going to get killed, or maybe even one of the bosses that allowed it and didn't take care of it. And through the history, there's only a couple of reasons why you get killed, and one of them is that killing somebody without permission, and killing another family's boss without permission, and you have retribution, like in the Paul Castellano hit at uh, Sparks Steakhouse in the hit, one of the mastermind hits of mob history that John Gotti will be infamous for the rest of eternity. So when you have hits like that, then guys like the retribution is they killed several of the Gambino soldiers, Bobby Borriello being one in front of his house. Eddie Lino was also killed. And these hits are, and Frankie DeChico was blown up in 1986. And the Sicilian way of killing him is 5 years to the date, they killed Bobby Borriello in front of his house. So it was, you kill one, we kill two. And that's something that the Albanians live off of. If you kill one of ours, we kill two of yours. And, this is the part of history that's uh, something that's quite really, if you think about it, in a normal everyday society, that this was going on to that extent. So openly, there were murders, like I described, from one part of town down to the next part of town. And I could have kept going with some other names that of people that were murdered and that were killed in our neighborhood, one after another. That I didn't even bring up, but you can bring them up because today's society of the mob world, it's more of a white collar uh, criminal activity. It's not the violence that you're seeing in the 80s and the 90s and even at the early 2000s. But since then, uh, the way the thinking of the current mafia is the violence will bring down the family for a lot of reasons that I've discussed in the past. You have the RICO racketeering law that decimated families like the Bonanno family. When you have the boss, Joe Messina, wearing a wire, his brother-in-law, the underboss, Sal Vitale, cooperating, and then the rest of the captains all the way down, took down the family of cooperation. And you had the same thing going on when you had guys like Sammy Gravano, the underboss of the Gambino family at one time, who cooperated. But like I always say, if they're really truly to believe they're as tough as they say they are, why, when they don't have a group of guys anymore, do guys like Sammy Gravano go hide in Arizona? And a guy that loves Brooklyn and he loves to brag about how tough he is, but then he went and he hid away. Why Joe Messina, when he cooperated, did he go hide away? So when they're lone wolves, they're actually sheep. And the belief of these guys being powerful, no, they're actually weak, and that's my message always to the young generation: is don't buy into this because I'll keep showing you the treachery, the deceit. Um, doesn't matter who it is. Although Vito was wrong for what he did, obviously, he had to be killed. But his brother-in-law could have said, "No, you're not killing my brother-in-law, and if you do, we're going to war." And we say going to the mattresses, right? Well, we used to. I used to. But that's not what happens. When you're gone, you're gone, and that all they worry about is their pocket and their money, and that's it. No different than people know I talk very highly of Joey Scopo, and one of the reasons I talk very highly of him, he was a different character than most of the guys on the street. He was a gentleman. He was well spoken. He was a hell of a nice guy to everybody, neighborhood, his family, his child. He loved his kids and his son. Uh, Carried himself different. You wouldn't know if he went out and he went to a board meeting or if he went with a bunch of engineers or doctors. And he was very soft spoken, humble. So there's characters that I, people in that life I did very much respect when I was in that life. Unfortunately, they chose the wrong path, ended their life very early. Their family suffered, and it's just not worth that life. And that's back to what I always say. It looks glamorous, it looks exciting, but everybody's got to look at the small print. It's a devastating life. And for anybody who wants to be a father or a family man, just doesn't work. That's not what happens in that world. That world is disaster, pain, frustration, betrayal, uh, manipulation. any bad word you can think of, adjective for misery, and that's what their life is, misery. And I'll continue to tell you some stories here and there. I got a different path in my life. People know that now. Politically, God, family, and I always implore anybody that's in that world to go back into the right path, the right world. Um, Go to work, be a family person, be a God person, a God loving person, faith, and do positive things in the world. There's so many things you can do in a positive way, help others, and hopefully your life will turn around also. All right, everybody. God bless you. Watch, subscribe, follow me, write in, and have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody.